and the Prime Minister is just playing whack-a-mole.
Forward a budget that gives so much help to Canadians, the Conservatives don't even have any questions on it.
Site. And we are continuing our study on women living in rural communities. And the second panel today will be women's unpaid work. Speak slowly and clearly. And when you're not speaking, your mic should be on mute. And so now I'd like to welcome our witnesses, who will each have a chance, 5 minutes of opening remarks. I don't know if you're going to share together or not. But from Boys and Girls Club of Canada, we have Shealah Hart, who's the National Youth Council member, and Traci Anderson from BGC Kamloops, who's the Executive Director. And so I'm going to ask Shealah, if you want to start, you have 5 minutes.
All right. Thank you, first of all, for that kind welcome. Myself and Traci have actually prepared to share our 5 minutes. If we have your permission to do so, we will proceed that way. And I guess then if we have a little bit of wiggle room, perhaps we can go ahead with that.
Perfect. Go ahead.
So I will pass over to Traci because she is going to begin our presentation for you all today. So here you go, Traci. Thank you.
Thank you, Shealah. Clubs support 200,000 children, youth and families in 775 communities across Canada, including rural communities from coast to coast to coast. Clubs play an important role in building social safety nets for so many Canadians and their families. Clubs across the country offer equity, acceptance, support, and opportunity. And opportunity changes everything, whether it's homework help or a homeless shelter, a quick snack after school, or the only meal of a day for some of our youth, a high five, or a one-to-one mental health check-in. Our clubs offer everything a young person needs, including access to opportunity they might not find outside our walls, and opportunities that change lives. My name is Traci. I'm the Executive Director of the BGC Kamloops in British Columbia, population of over 100,000. And I'm also the Acting Director of the BGC Williams Lake in the heart of Caribou with a population of 12,000. And I'll pass it over to Shealah.
I'm Shealah, a youth from Northern Arm, Newfoundland and Labrador, population just 426. And today I'm here representing my club in the neighboring community of Botwood, Newfoundland and Labrador, as well as BGC Canada as a member of their National Youth Council. Thank you so much for having us here today to speak to you all. Traci and I would like to highlight 3 intersecting issues that affect women in rural communities. First is access to internet. Second is employment, and third is childcare. First, we'll briefly highlight the issues as we see them, and then give our recommendations for action. One of the largest barriers that exist in rural communities is unreliable internet access, which has become especially problematic during the ongoing pandemic with the transition to online learning, particularly for post-secondary students across the country. Without internet access, I would have had to delay pursuing my post-secondary degree. Yet, with access to internet, I still experience and have experienced disconnecting during lectures, relying on the homes of friends and family in neighboring communities to complete my exams or upload assignments. In fact, I'm here today connecting in a neighboring community, not only due to the fear that my internet will cut out, but because the internet speed in my rural community is not strong enough to support both my sister and myself learning online at the same time. Another struggle those of us living in rural communities face is obtaining employment. In my community, there are only a handful of places to work, each providing minimum wage. And $12 an hour doesn't exactly pay the bills or put food on the table. As a youth who so dearly loves her rural community, I want to be able to continue to call Northern Arm my home. However, without strong internet access, educational opportunities for myself and future children, and a job that allows me to fulfill my passions, I will be forced to leave the place that I know as home.
And on childcare, we applaud the recently announced commitment to a national childcare program within the federal budget. Childcare issues, as you know, are complex. And for those in rural communities, the challenges are compounded. As a leading national not-for-profit childcare provider, Clubs know the benefit that access to quality, enriching childcare can have on the lives of children, yet for some it just simply isn't accessible. Childcare is key to the economic stability of Canada and getting people back to work. Not-for-profit providers are key partners to ensuring that every community can have access to childcare and before and after school programs. We see firsthand the effects systemic problems like poor access to internet, employment, and childcare have within rural communities, and the impact this has on women's access to opportunities. We know that the solution needs to be systemic. We need a system of wraparound supports that address all of the intersecting issues to sustain rural communities and their prosperity in the long term. We have 4 recommendations for this committee.
First, we were pleased to see the inclusion of a universal broadband fund within Budget 2021. Our first recommendation is to focus on affordable options. Canadian service providers must be mandated by government to service areas that are currently struggling with internet accessibility and to put a system in place so that prices are not higher in smaller communities for poorer service. Our second recommendation is to work with provincial and territorial governments to provide support so that rural communities are able to build their economies. Incredible things can happen in small communities, but we do need this support. We see this throughout the province of Newfoundland and Labrador in tiny communities with small populations who have made incredible money, incredible income from tourism. But we need help to be able to get those things off the ground and to get them started. It's also integral that we continue to find ways for people to work from home. And improving internet access, of course, is a huge part of this.
Our third recommendation focuses on childcare. We know from our clubs and our members across the country that a one-size-fits-all approach will not suit the diversity we see in families across the country. Some families are looking for childcare to be co-located within schools, whereas others prefer childcare in community to participate in skills-based learning and recreational activities. Our final recommendation is to focus on higher and more equitable wages to stabilize the childcare sector. We know there needs to be equal effort to attract people to the childcare workforce as there is to reducing fees for parents. We cannot increase childcare spaces without staff to care for children. We are experiencing critical staffing shortages and our wait lists continue to grow, which forces parents to place unborn children on wait lists in hopes that they can access space. 95% of childcare staff are women, and they continue to be paid low wages, often resulting in them leaving the sector to further their careers and for higher wages. Without stable childcare, women who want to enter the workforce simply cannot. We wish to thank the committee members for providing us with this opportunity to speak with you, and we look forward to your questions. Thank you.
Very good. And I apologize for the delays we had at the start from the votes, but thanks so much for being here. And we'll start our first round of questions with Ms. Sahota for 6 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to the witnesses as well for being here and for your testimony as well. I wanted to touch on, Ms. Anderson, what you just said about childcare. And I'm wondering if you can elaborate a little bit on how the there's a universal childcare that's being proposed by the government. I'm just wondering if you can talk about some of the challenges that the rural communities will face and how the childcare needs may not be met under this universal childcare proposal.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for this question. It's very similar in rural communities as it is actually in some larger centers, and it's just that quality access to care. Simply in rural communities, there isn't childcare providers, for one, which is meaning that families have to leave their community to bring their children to reliable childcare. Some of the recommendations that BGC has regarding the National Child Care Program is really thinking about it holistically and including all ages. So it's not just a 0 to 5, but also school age children need to be able to access childcare. And this is really challenging in rural communities. And then our key issue is the fact that we do not have enough staff. And there's some pretty regulated circumstances in which you can hire staff for childcare, which relates to quality and hiring early childhood educators. And we simply just don't have enough staffing resources. And so that's just compounded in rural communities. So we're really interested and want to work with the government regarding their plans for the Universal Child Care Program.
So just to build on that, Ms. Anderson, you spoke about some of the challenges, but then also I'm wondering if you can give me your thoughts on the universal childcare that's being proposed is a cookie cutter kind of approach. It'll look exactly the same from coast to coast to coast. And I'm just wondering if you can give me your thoughts on what are some of the challenges that may be faced because it's a rural community. The childcare spaces, not so much spaces, but the childcare facilities will be separated further away, and women don't necessarily work from 9 to 5 jobs, and this will be a 9 to 5. And then also the parental choice, not being able to leave the children with grandparents, for example, or, you know, how important is the parental choice in that?
Thank you for the question, Madam Chair. The parental choice is absolutely very important, and to have a cookie cutter sort of approach across the country from coast to coast to coast does not make sense. Every community in Canada is a little bit different, and the program needs to have flexibility so that childcare can fit the needs of those communities. When we talk about BGCs across Canada, if you've been in one BGC, you've been in one BGC. That's something that our CEO always says, because we really do work to fit the needs of our communities. And I think that's integral for this plan as it rolls out, that it really needs to be diverse. There needs to be inclusion for flexible childcare. You know, parents don't work 9 to 5, and especially since the pandemic, we're learning that there's a lot of really flex work schedules now, and so childcare needs to work to fit that. So we absolutely believe that it can't be a one-size-fits-all approach. And it's just, like I said, compounded for rural communities. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Hart, you spoke a bit about some of the challenges you're facing as a young woman in a rural community. I'm just wondering if you can elaborate a little bit on that. How do women in rural and remote areas integrate into the local and regional economy, given there's internet challenges? Broadband is not widely available. So please, if you can.
Thank you so much for that question. I can only speak from my perspective, of course, and I recognize and understand that the challenges are different in different rural communities throughout my province and also throughout the country. But I know, speaking from my own perspective, I've really been faced with some challenges over the course of the past year or so with the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic and internet inaccessibility. In my own community, there is one internet provider, so no other option to go with a different provider. It is what it is. And that provider, the quality of internet we're receiving is very poor, can't seem to get anything done about that, and the costs are high for the services we're receiving. So for me in particular, I've been trying to take advantage of new opportunities to learn and grow and develop despite being stuck at home during this time. However, it's become quite difficult to attend things like Daughters of the Vote and YWCA's Women's Summit, which I was able to attend this past March, but I had to come to a neighboring community.
Very good. That's the end of your time. So we'll go to Ms. Hutchings.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thanks to both our witnesses for being here today, and a special hello to Botwood from Little Rapids. That's where I am today, Shealah. So again, thank you both for your comments, and as my colleagues know, I speak about really rural parts of Canada. As you know, Shealah, I'm in a really rural area as well, and I agree with you all on your comments about connectivity. You know, connectivity was an issue long before COVID-19 hit, but that ripped off the Band-Aid. And I'm sure you've heard our commitments, and we're well underway to have 98% of Canada connected by 2026. And I hope I can count on the support of my colleagues here to support the budget, because we added $1 billion to the Universal Broadband Fund, which is making a difference. And one of the criteria under this new Universal Broadband Fund, and part of it in the rapid response stream, Shealah, is affordability. That is the criteria. That is one of the criteria boxes. So I'm looking forward to roll out more and more applications across the country and encourage people to apply, because we are well underway to reach our goal and connect more Canadians, because we know that that is such a component, especially as women recover and as small businesses recover in rural Canada everywhere. And it's interesting to see how people are coming to the rural parts of Canada. Nothing against my colleagues in the urban centers, but they're coming to the rural centers for a fresher air, quality of life, bigger open spaces, and we know how important the connectivity piece is. And I welcome your comments too, Ms. Anderson, on the childcare piece, because we are building the footprint for this now. There's no cookie cutter set yet, and it's working with the provinces and territories on how this needs to be implemented and how it needs to be different in rural. So I'd love your comments of, if there were two pieces of advice, you gave us one, it needs to be more flexible. But what else would you say as they develop the childcare piece for really rural, and I mean really rural areas across the country? What couple of criteria would you love to see in that piece as it gets developed, along with flexibility?
I believe one of the challenges that would be faced for very rural communities is the access to quality staff. So I would recommend that there could be some flexibility around training opportunities for people entering the workforce into childcare. And of course, to match that, we need to see some equitable wages, some wages that would draw some people in, and some other benefits. So we've talked a little bit nationally with BGCs around an opportunity for training, such as training like trades. So you would enter into the field and you can hit the ground working, get right into the field, and then learn sort of as you go, and sort of like that apprenticeship approach. So we just really feel like the education for early childhood education needs to be reimagined in a creative way that would draw more people into the sector.
Great, thank you. And I'm familiar with the Boys and Girls Club in St. Anthony. They do phenomenal work there for all ages, and I love your model because it's welcoming. It's just not for the preschool kids. It's a welcoming environment, and the work you do there is phenomenal. On your comments regarding
for the final 6 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would love to actually continue on sort of that path set forward by Madame Larouche. I know that from my constituency office, we've been bombarded often with calls. People are frustrated, and I know that it's during COVID, things are different right now, but they're frustrated with the status of their own or their loved ones' immigration case file, and oftentimes we have heard from them that they are even more isolated here, that they're so saddened, and there's a mental health stress of not being able to have those supports with them here in Canada. Maybe you could talk about that. And I also wanted to add, I have this incredible community in my riding, and they are exactly what you described in terms of a group of women who are Southeast Asian background descent, they cannot go anywhere without the supports of their husbands. They are away from our community. They don't actually even the city. It's a new neighborhood. They don't have access to traditional transportation and all those things. So if you could expand on that, Ms. Dillon, as well, to talk about the need and what we can do to increase the supports, whether it's through subsidized transportation from the feds to municipalities and what have you. It's all kind of linked in together, I think.
Thank you so much. So basically, I'll begin with answering my question with the manifestations of all these problems. So because this is a three-level intersectionality, being minority within a minority. I call immigrants as minorities, and then I call women as minority within minority, and women become a minority within a minority and a minority. So this is a three-tier of minority when we talk about single immigrant women, and it also has three level of manifestations. So first becomes in the mental, social, and then physical. So mental, it definitely affects the services. Social, it affects the social integration of our society, and then physically, it does affect the health system of our country. So if we look into providing more accessible and equitable resources, we definitely the subsidized transport, the public transport and other things. And definitely we can also look into the fourth R, which I mentioned previously, which is reward, which could be given into like offering a different tax bracket for these women and offering definitely a childcare rates geared to income, and then subsidized insurance to single women. This is because this may be my view that women definitely they are responsible drivers, and if we have those subsidized insurance on home, auto, and any other which is applicable, that would be great.
And if anyone else wanted to add in terms of that immigration piece, ensuring, I mean, we certainly have seen there's a broken system. The lottery system that came forward didn't necessarily work. What supports into citizenship and immigration need to occur?
Don't forget to like, dislike, subscribe, and comment. Safe Space Cafe. And always, have a good